Ava arrived in New York City like a shadow slipping through the crowded streets. To anyone watching, she was just another face among the millions, her steps confident yet unnoticed. New York, with its towering buildings and endless noise, was the perfect place for someone like her to hide in plain sight. She was here on a mission, but not one that anyone could ever guess. Ava wasn't human, she was something else entirely, from a place far away from Earth. The city didn't intimidate Ava. Instead, it intrigued her. She watched the people hurrying by, each absorbed in their own world. They didn't notice the way she studied them, trying to understand their hurried steps, their tired eyes, and their occasional smiles. Ava was curious about these humans. They were so different from what she was used to. Her first night in the city was a quiet affair. Ava found a park bench and sat there for hours, just watching. The city's lights flickered and danced, casting long shadows that moved like ghosts among the trees. It was peaceful in a way, despite the constant buzz of activity around her. As she sat, Ava thought about her mission. She was here to find certain individuals, people who wouldn't be missed. It sounded cruel, perhaps, but to Ava, it was simply what she had to do. There was no malice in her actions, she was driven by a need that the people of Earth couldn't understand. But as the night grew deeper and the air cooler, Ava felt a stir of something unfamiliar. It was a sense of anticipation, a feeling that, in this vast city of lights and shadows, something unexpected might just happen. She stood up from the bench, her decision made. It was time to begin her hunt. She blended into the crowds, her steps now purposeful. Ava was no longer just an observer, she was a participant in the city's night. The transformation was subtle but undeniable. She was ready to find those she sought, but part of her wondered what else she might discover in this sprawling urban jungle. Her journey had just begun, and the night was full of possibilities. The next few days saw Ava moving through New York with a new sense of purpose. She learned quickly, adapting to the rhythms of the city. She watched from afar as people went about their days, rushing from one place to another, their faces often showing more stress than happiness. It was in these hurried moments that Ava found her targets, those who seemed alone, their isolation making them invisible to the world around them. Ava's approach was always gentle, her voice soft and inviting. She would ask for directions or offer a helping hand, simple acts of kindness that were hard to refuse. To those she approached, Ava seemed like a good Samaritan, a friendly face in the indifferent crowd. Little did they know the truth that lay beneath her human disguise. Each encounter followed a similar pattern. Ava would strike up a conversation, her interest appearing genuine. She listened to their stories, nodding and smiling at the right moments. To these men, Ava was a rare connection in their otherwise lonely lives. They were flattered by the attention, eager to share more about themselves. And Ava, ever the patient listener, used this to her advantage. The places she led them to were always secluded, far from the prying eyes of the city. An abandoned building or a quiet alleyway served as the perfect backdrop for her true intentions. There, the atmosphere changed. The friendly stranger they thought they knew became something else entirely. It was only in these final moments that her targets realized they had misjudged the situation, but by then, it was too late. Ava felt a twinge of something akin to regret each time she saw the realization dawn in their eyes. But this feeling was quickly overshadowed by the necessity of her mission. She reminded herself that this was the reason she was here, that these actions, however harsh, served a greater purpose. With each man she led away, Ava left behind the bustling streets and returned to the shadows from which she had emerged. New York, with its endless distractions and hidden corners, was the perfect place for someone like her. She was a ghost in the machine, unseen and unfathomable. Yet, as the days turned into nights and Ava continued her hunt, the city began to leave its mark on her. The endless sea of faces, each with their own story, started to blur together, reminding Ava that her mission, though singular in purpose, was complex in its emotional toll. The hunt was far from over, but Ava was already changing, the city's pulse intertwining with her own in ways she hadn't anticipated. The line between predator and participant was blurring, setting the stage for a transformation that Ava could not yet comprehend. One evening, as the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the streets, Ava's path took a turn. She found herself in a part of the city she hadn't explored before, where the bustle of the day gave way to a quieter, more reflective atmosphere. It was here, under the dim glow of a street lamp, that she encountered Michael. Michael was different from the others Ava had met. There was a depth to his solitude, a palpable sense of loss that surrounded him like a cloak. He sat alone on a bench, his gaze lost in the distance, unaware of the world moving around him. Ava, driven by a curiosity she couldn't quite understand, approached him. "Is this seat taken?" she asked, her voice softer than she intended. Michael looked up, surprised by the interruption. For a moment, Ava thought she saw a flicker of hope cross his face, quickly masked by a cautious curiosity. "No, it's all yours," he replied, shifting to make room. Sitting beside him, Ava felt an unfamiliar hesitation. Her mission, always so clear, suddenly seemed distant, like a memory fading into the night. They talked, the conversation flowing more easily than Ava had expected. Michael spoke of his life, of dreams deferred and love lost, his words painting a picture of a man searching for something to fill the void within. Ava listened, truly listened, to the sorrow in his voice, the longing for connection that echoed her own hidden desires. For the first time, she saw the human behind the target, a soul as lost and searching as she was. The realization startled her, a crack in the armor she had built around her heart. As the night deepened, their conversation turned to lighter topics, but the undercurrent of shared loneliness remained. Ava found herself laughing at a joke Michael made, the sound surprising her as much as it did him. In that moment, under the soft glow of the street lamp, they were just two people, sharing a moment of understanding in the vastness of the city. When they parted ways, Ava felt a pang of something akin to regret. She watched Michael walk away, his shoulders a little less burdened than before. Turning back into the night, Ava realized that her encounter with Michael had changed something within her. The mission that had brought her to Earth, once so consuming, now felt weighed down by the complexity of human emotions she was beginning to understand. The encounter left Ava adrift in a sea of newfound feelings. As she walked through the sleeping city, the echo of humanity pulsed around her, a reminder of the connection she had experienced, however fleeting. For the first time since her arrival, Ava felt a genuine curiosity about the world she had entered, a desire to understand the myriad lives that unfolded around her. Her mission remained, but now it was tinged with a complexity she hadn't anticipated. Ava realized that her journey on Earth would not just be about the hunt, it would also be a quest for understanding, a bridge between the alien she was and the humanity she sought to comprehend. The days following Ava's encounter with Michael were filled with introspection. As she walked the streets of New York, the city's vibrant energy seemed to pulse in tune with her own growing turmoil. People, once mere targets of her mission, now wore faces filled with stories, desires, and dreams. Ava found herself lingering in public places, watching and wondering about the lives unfolding around her. This newfound curiosity led Ava to change her approach. No longer did she seek out the isolated with the sole purpose of ensnaring them. Instead, she engaged with them, listening to their tales not as a predator, but as a fellow wanderer in the city's vast maze. Each story added layers to her understanding, painting a complex picture of humanity that Ava had not been programmed to comprehend. One afternoon, Ava found herself in a small cafe, a place buzzing with the quiet energy of people seeking refuge from the city's relentless pace. She sat at a corner table, a cup of coffee in front of her, an alien gesture she had learned to mimic. Around her, conversations flowed like music, a symphony of human interaction that fascinated and overwhelmed her in equal measure. It was here that she met Lena, a young artist with eyes that sparkled with unspoken dreams. Lena's passion for her art was infectious, and as she shared her sketches with Ava, something within the alien stirred. For the first time, Ava felt a genuine connection to another being, a sense of kinship that went beyond her mission. Lena spoke of her art as a means of understanding the world, a concept that resonated with Ava's own emerging quest for meaning. The more Ava immersed herself in these human encounters, the more she felt herself changing. The rigid boundaries of her mission began to blur, giving way to a spectrum of emotions she had been unaware of. Joy, sorrow, hope, and despair, each emotion painted her experiences in hues she was learning to recognize and, to her surprise, cherish. This transformation was not without its challenges. Ava struggled with the duality of her existence, caught between her alien nature and the human emotions that now colored her days. She felt a growing sense of vulnerability, a fear of discovery that clashed with her desire to explore the depths of her newfound humanity. One evening, as she watched the sunset from the edge of the city, Ava realized that her journey on Earth had taken on a new direction. She was no longer just an observer or a hunter, she was a participant in the very tapestry of life she had been sent to exploit. This realization was both liberating and daunting, for it came with a profound sense of responsibility to the beings she had once viewed as mere resources. As the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, Ava made a decision. She would continue her mission, but with a new purpose. She would seek understanding, not just of humanity but of herself. Her transformation, once an unintended consequence of her interactions, was now her guiding light. Ava stepped into the night, a being caught between worlds, but with a heart beating in tune with the city that had become her crucible. Ava's journey through the human world took a dramatic turn one chilly evening. As she navigated the crowded streets, her senses on high alert, she stumbled upon a scene that would forever alter her course. In a dimly lit alley, far from the city's watchful eyes, Ava's true nature was exposed in a confrontation that left her reeling. The night had begun like any other, with Ava weaving through the city's tapestry, now more observer than predator. Her recent encounters had instilled in her a deep sense of curiosity and an even deeper sense of caution. She was aware of the risks, the fragile line she tread between discovery and the shadows in which she found solace. It was in this alley that Ava met Tom, a young man whose sharp eyes saw through the facade she had so carefully constructed. "What are you?" he asked, his voice a mix of fear and fascination. The question caught Ava off guard. For the first time, she found herself at a loss, her mission, her very existence, questioned in a way that shook her to her core. The encounter escalated quickly, with Tom's curiosity turning to suspicion and then to accusation. Ava tried to deflect, to maintain the human persona she had adopted, but the veil had been lifted. In a moment of panic, her alien abilities surfaced, a defensive mechanism triggered by fear. The alley, once just a narrow stretch of shadow, became a battleground of identity and survival. Tom's reaction was a mix of horror and awe. He stumbled back, his eyes wide with the realization of what stood before him. Ava, too, was shaken, not just by the exposure of her true self but by the violent emotions that surged through her, a cocktail of fear, regret, and an unexpected pang of loneliness. The aftermath of the confrontation left Ava fleeing into the night, her heart pounding with a mixture of adrenaline and something akin to grief. She had come to Earth on a mission, her objectives clear and her resolve unwavering. But now, as she ran through the streets, her destination uncertain, she was plagued by doubt. Her interactions with humanity had opened her eyes to the complexities of life, to the shades of gray that colored every decision, every interaction. As Ava disappeared into the night, the echoes of her encounter with Tom lingered in the alley, a stark reminder of the fragile line that separated her from the world she had come to know. The revelation of her true nature was a turning point, a moment that forced her to confront the reality of her existence and the consequences of her actions. The city, once a backdrop to her mission, now felt like a maze, its walls closing in as Ava grappled with her newfound vulnerability. She was an alien, yes, but the emotions that coursed through her were undeniably human. Fear, confusion, and a deep-seated longing for connection clashed within her, painting her journey with a new layer of complexity. In the solitude of the night, Ava realized that her transformation was far from over. The revelation in the alley had exposed her to the truth of her own duality, the alien and the human intertwined in a dance of existence. She was no longer just a visitor on this planet, she had become a part of its story, for better or worse. As dawn broke over the city, Ava emerged from the shadows, her resolve hardened by the night's events. She knew that the path ahead would be fraught with challenges, but she also knew that turning back was not an option. Her mission had evolved, and with it, her understanding of what it meant to be alive. The revelations of the night had changed her, and now she faced the future with a mix of fear, hope, and a determination to find her place in the world she had come to inhabit. In the days that followed her confrontation in the alley, Ava moved through New York with a newfound caution. The city, once a vast playground for her mission, had transformed into a landscape filled with potential dangers. Each shadow seemed to conceal a threat, each passing glance a possible recognition of her true self. The exposure to Tom had left a crack in her facade, making her all too aware of her vulnerability. Yet, it was not just fear that drove Ava now, it was also a profound sense of isolation. The encounter had stripped her of the anonymity she had taken for granted, revealing the chasm between her and the humans she had come to know. She felt exposed, not just as an alien, but as a being craving connection in a world that no longer felt welcoming. Ava's days became a blur of evasion and introspection. She avoided the crowded places she once frequented, seeking solace in the city's quieter corners. Parks became her refuge, where she could blend in with the backdrop of nature, a stark contrast to the concrete maze that had defined her existence. Here, in the relative peace, Ava wrestled with the turmoil within her. The revelation of her alien nature had ignited a torrent of questions. What was her purpose now? Could she continue her mission in the face of her evolving emotions and the risks of exposure? And, more hauntingly, was there a place for her in this world, caught as she was between two realities? As she grappled with these questions, Ava realized that her time on Earth had altered her in ways she could not have anticipated. She had come as a hunter, cold and detached, but the humans she had encountered had imbued her with a complexity of feelings she was ill-equipped to navigate. Love, empathy, sorrow, their echoes resonated within her, shaping her actions and clouding her once clear objectives. The turning point came unexpectedly. Ava found herself being followed. At first, she thought it was her heightened paranoia, but the subtle signs were unmistakable. Someone was tracking her movements, their intentions unclear. Ava's alien instincts surged to the forefront, a primal urge to survive overriding the human emotions she had come to experience. The pursuit reached its climax one night under a moonlit sky. Ava, cornered and desperate, faced her pursuer in a quiet alley, much like the one where her world had first started to unravel. But this time, she was not caught off guard. This time, she was ready. The confrontation was brief and intense. Ava's pursuer revealed himself to be another like her, sent to ensure her mission's completion or her elimination. The revelation shook Ava to her core. She was not alone in her struggle, yet the presence of her kin did not bring comfort, only a deeper sense of despair. They were bound by the same directives, yet divided by the experiences that had shaped their time on Earth. In the end, Ava's decision was driven by a desire to protect the world she had come to inhabit, a world that, despite its flaws, had shown her the beauty of connection. With a mixture of sorrow and resolve, Ava turned away from her pursuer, choosing a path that led not to confrontation, but to sacrifice. Ava's final moments were a testament to her transformation. As she accepted her fate, allowing the mission to consume her in a literal sense, her thoughts were not of her home planet or the objective she had failed to complete. Instead, they were of the people she had met, the connections she had formed, and the glimpse of humanity she had been granted. In her last breath, Ava was not an alien or a hunter. She was a being who had dared to love, to feel, and to dream. The city that had been the stage for her end continued its relentless pace, unaware of the drama that had unfolded in its shadows. Ava's legacy, however, lived on in the hearts of those she had touched, a silent reminder of the fragile threads that connect all beings in the tapestry of existence. In the aftermath of Ava's departure from this world, the city of New York carried on, its rhythm unaltered by the loss of one who had walked its streets in silence. Yet, for those whose lives had intersected with hers, the world seemed subtly changed. They might not have understood the full extent of Ava's nature or her mission, but they felt the absence of her presence, like a melody halted mid-note. Michael, the man who had shared a moment of connection with Ava under the dim light of a street lamp, found himself wandering back to that same bench. He didn't know why he was drawn there, night after night, as if waiting for something or someone who would never return. In his heart, a seed of change had been planted, a yearning for understanding and connection that Ava had awakened. Michael began to see the world through a different lens, one that valued the fleeting moments of genuine human interaction. Lena, the young artist with dreams as vivid as her paintings, noticed the shift in her creativity. Her conversations with Ava, though brief, had opened her eyes to the depth and complexity of existence. Her art took on a new quality, exploring themes of connection, isolation, and the unseen threads that bind us. Through her work, Ava's legacy lived on, inspiring others to look beyond the surface and appreciate the intricate dance of life. Tom, the man who had confronted Ava in the alley, was perhaps the most affected by their encounter. The revelation of Ava's true self had shattered his worldview, leaving him to grapple with the knowledge that the universe was far more vast and mysterious than he had ever imagined. This realization led him down a path of introspection and, eventually, acceptance. Tom dedicated himself to seeking out the overlooked and misunderstood, driven by a newfound purpose to bridge the gaps between beings, regardless of their origin. As the seasons changed, whispers of Ava's story began to weave their way through the city. They were tales tinged with wonder and speculation, of a stranger who had walked among them, not quite human, yet not entirely alien. People spoke of encounters that left them feeling strangely moved, of moments of unexplained connection that lingered long after they had passed. And in the quiet spaces of the city, where the hustle of daily life gave way to moments of reflection, it was said that others like Ava could be found. These beings, each on their own journey between the stars and the human heart, walked the fine line between observer and participant. Through them, Ava's quest for understanding and connection found new expression, a silent symphony of shared existence that echoed through the streets of New York. Ava's story, though it had ended in sacrifice, had sparked a subtle transformation in the world she had left behind. Her legacy was not one of fear or alienation, but of curiosity, empathy, and the recognition of our shared vulnerability. In her quest to understand humanity, Ava had revealed the profound truth that, in the vastness of the cosmos, the connections we forge are what truly define us. The city, with its endless capacity for renewal, absorbed Ava's story into its tapestry, a reminder that even the most fleeting encounters can leave indelible marks on our souls. And as the sun set over the skyline, casting long shadows and bathing the streets in a golden light, there was a sense of unity, a silent acknowledgement of the invisible bonds that connect us all, human and alien alike, in the endless dance of life.